Standing in the shadow of these massive stones, weathered by thousands of years of wind and rain, it's impossible not to feel a shiver of awe. Picture this towering megaliths, some weighing as much as 50 elephants, arranged in patterns that defy explanation, their surfaces carved with symbols no one can fully decipher. These aren't just rocks, they feel like the bones of something ancient, something almost otherworldly. What if the stories whispered across generations hold a grain of truth? What if these structures weren't built by ordinary hands, but by a race of giants, their existence now lost to time? From the misty hills of Britain's Stonehenge to the sun-baked plains of Turkey's Gerbically Teep, these monuments stretch across the globe as if part of some grand, forgotten design. And wherever they stand, they've sparked the same question: how could ancient civilizations without modern tools or technology achieve such impossible feats? Legends from every corner of the world tell of giants, beings of unimaginable strength who walked the earth long before recorded history. The Maori speak of the Patupeia, the Norse of the Jötunn, the Greeks of the Titans. And in nearly every culture, these tales are intertwined with the very stones that still stand today. Were these megaliths their handiwork, their tombs? Or perhaps even messages left behind, waiting for us to unravel their meaning? The sheer scale of these structures defies logic. Some blocks fit together so precisely, not even a blade of grass can slip between them. Others were transported hundreds of miles across rivers and mountains with no clear record of how it was done. It's as if the stones themselves dare us to solve their mystery. This is where myth and science collide, where the lines between legend and reality blur into something far more fascinating. Over the next journey, we'll piece together the puzzle of these ancient wonders. We'll explore the wildest theories, from lost advanced civilizations to extraterrestrial visitors, and weigh them against the latest archaeological discoveries. We'll walk in the footsteps of the people who built these monuments, or perhaps the giants who inspired them, because one thing is certain: these stones weren't placed at random. They were meant to last, to tell a story, to stir something deep inside us even now. So let's dig into the earth and the myths and uncover the secrets of the bones of giants. The idea of giants isn't confined to one culture or era. It's a thread woven through the fabric of human storytelling, appearing in traditions separated by oceans and centuries. Take the Nephilim, described in the Hebrew Bible as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men, towering figures whose very existence blurred the line between divine and mortal. Or the Jötunn of Norse sagas, primal forces of chaos who shaped mountains with their bare hands and battled the gods for dominion over the cosmos. Even the Greeks told of the Titans, a race of colossal beings overthrown by Zeus and the Olympians in a war that shook the heavens. These aren't just isolated legends, they're echoes of something deeper, a shared fascination with beings whose scale defied human limits. What's striking is how often these stories mirror the physical remains left behind. The Book of Enoch describes giants as builders of immense stone structures, while indigenous oral histories from the Americas speak of ancient ones who could lift boulders as if they were pebbles. Could these tales have been inspired by the same megaliths that baffle us today? When early humans stumbled upon ruins like Balbeck's massive foundation, stones some weighing over 1,000 tons, what else could they have imagined but giants? Without the context of advanced engineering, the simplest explanation might have been the most awe-inspiring: that these stones were the work of beings as far above humans as humans are above ants. Yet there's another layer to these myths. Giants aren't just builders, they're often portrayed as fallen or extinct, their era ending in catastrophe. The Norse believed the Jötunn would return at Ragnarök to destroy the world, while Aztec legends describe a race of giants wiped out by floods. Even Plato's account of Atlantis hints at a forgotten civilization of unparalleled achievement. Could these recurring themes of destruction reflect dim memories of real collapses, natural disasters, or societal declines that left only the megaliths as silent witnesses? The stones endure, but the hands that moved them vanished, leaving behind not just ruins but riddles. So were giants ever real? The answer might lie somewhere between imagination and archaeology. These myths could be humanity's first attempt at explaining the unexplainable, a way to make sense of the impossible scale of ancient ruins. Or perhaps they're fragments of a deeper truth, stories passed down from a time when the line between history and legend was thinner. Either way, one thing is clear: wherever we find megaliths, we find tales of giants, and that connection alone is enough to make us wonder. Stonehenge rises from England's Salisbury Plain like a skeletal hand reaching from the earth, its massive sarsen stones standing twice as tall as a grown man. Each one weighs as much as 4 cars, hauled from quarries over 20 miles away, then locked together with joints so precise they've held firm for millennia. But what's truly baffling isn't just their size, it's their purpose. The entire structure aligns perfectly with the summer solstice sunrise, as if the builders encoded celestial knowledge into stone. Was it a temple, a calendar, or something even weirder? Now leap across the globe to Easter Island, where the stoic Moai stare inland with hollow eyes. These volcanic giants, some standing 30 feet tall, were carved from solid rock, then somehow transported miles across rugged terrain. No wheels, no draft animals, just sheer human ingenuity, or some say otherworldly help. Then there's Balbeck in Lebanon, home to the Trilithan, 3 limestone blocks so enormous that modern cranes would struggle to lift them. Each one dwarfs a city bus, fitted together with eerie precision at the base of a Roman temple, except scholars agree the Romans didn't place them. Whoever did left no blueprints, no records, just a silent challenge etched in stone. And off the coast of Japan, the Yonaguni monument lurks beneath the waves, a sprawling pyramid-like structure with terraces and staircases that some argue are too geometric to be natural. If human-made, it would rewrite history, suggesting a lost civilization swallowed by rising seas. From the Andes to the Indonesian jungles, these sites share uncanny similarities: impossible weights, inexplicable transport methods, and alignments with stars or solstices. But here's the twist: they're often built by cultures separated by oceans and centuries, with no way to share knowledge. So how did they all arrive at the same staggering solutions? Did they stumble upon a universal architectural secret, or were they guided by something or someone beyond our understanding? The stones won't talk, but their whispers echo across time, daring us to listen. Scientists have spent decades trying to crack the code of how ancient civilizations moved these colossal stones. One of the most widely accepted theories involves ramp systems. Imagine teams of workers hauling blocks up earthen slopes, using logs as rollers and ropes made from plant fibers. At sites like the Great Pyramid, archaeologists have found remnants of such ramps, suggesting this method was plausible. But here's the catch: some megaliths weigh hundreds of tons, far beyond what simple ramps could handle. Experiments at France's Karnak stones showed that even with a team of 200 people, moving a 30-ton monolith required backbreaking labor and perfect coordination. So while ramps explain some structures, they don't account for the sheer scale of places like Balbeck. Then there's the lever and fulcrum technique, where workers would lift stones incrementally using wooden beams and counterweights. This method, documented in ancient Egyptian texts, could explain how blocks were stacked with such precision. But again, the math starts to unravel when applied to the heaviest megaliths. Moving a 1,000-ton stone would require levers of impossible length and thousands of workers, something no society could logistically support without leaving behind traces of such a massive effort. This is where fringe theories enter the conversation. Some researchers, like Graham Hancock, argue that these civilizations possessed lost technologies, perhaps even advanced knowledge passed down from a forgotten precursor culture. Ancient texts hint at mysterious devices like the Vimanas of Hindu lore, said to levitate objects with sound. Experiments in acoustic levitation have shown that certain frequencies can make small objects hover, but scaling this up to megalithic proportions remains firmly in the realm of speculation. Still, the persistence of such stories across cultures raises eyebrows. Why do so many legends describe builders using magical tools or divine assistance? And what about the uncanny consistency of these sites? From Peru to Egypt, megalithic builders employed similar techniques, interlocking stones, astronomical alignments, and near supernatural precision. If these methods were developed independently, why do they share such striking parallels? Mainstream archaeology points to the universality of human problem solving, but others wonder if there's more to the story. Could these similarities hint at a shared source of knowledge, now buried beneath millennia of dust? The truth is, no single theory fully explains the megaliths. Each has its merits and its glaring gaps. Maybe that's the point. These stones weren't meant to be easily understood. They stand as riddles carved in rock, challenging us to keep searching, to keep questioning. Because the moment we think we've solved them is the moment we stop seeing their true wonder. The notion of giant skeletal remains has lurked at the edges of archaeology for centuries, a tantalizing mix of hoax, misinterpretation, and genuine curiosity. Take the infamous Cardiff giant of the late 1800s, a 10-foot-tall, petrified man unearthed in New York, which drew crowds by the thousands before being exposed as a carved gypsum statue buried as a prank. Yet even after its debunking, newspapers of the era kept printing breathless accounts of similar discoveries, feeding a public hungry for proof that giants once walked the earth. Fast forward to the 21st century, and the cycle repeats. Blurry photos of elongated skeletons from Peru or oversized femurs in museum basements go viral, only for experts to identify them as mastodon bones or ceremonial burial bundles. But why does this idea persist? Part of it lies in the very real phenomenon of ancient peoples who were, by modern standards, unusually tall. The skeletons of certain Celtic warriors or Egyptian pharaohs occasionally stretch over 6.5 feet, a towering height in eras when malnutrition stunted average growth. Even more intriguing are the Paracas skulls of Peru, with their dramatic elongation from deliberate head-binding rituals. Though not evidence of literal giants, these finds reveal how cultural practices could reshape the human body in ways that might later spark legends. Then there's the matter of tools, massive stone axes from Neolithic sites or 12-foot-long obsidian blades that seem impossible for ordinary hands to wield. Could these belong to a population of exceptionally large individuals, or were they ceremonial objects meant to symbolize power rather than practicality? Scholars urge caution. The human skeleton follows strict biological limits. Gigantism as a medical condition leads to severe health issues, making it unlikely an entire race of giants thrived. Many oversized artifacts turn out to be misdated or misidentified, like the so-called giant hand axes that were actually quarrying tools. Yet the allure remains, perhaps because giants represent the ultimate, other a mirror held up to our own limitations. When we stand beside a megalithic block that defies modern engineering, it's comforting to imagine beings who could move them effortlessly, as if the past held secrets we've since forgotten. This dance between myth and evidence raises a deeper question. Does it matter whether giants were real, or is there power in what they reveal about us? Every culture that built megaliths also told stories of giants, suggesting these tales weren't just explanations but affirmations, a way to frame human achievement as something extraordinary, even divine. The stones endure, and so do the stories, because both speak to a truth beyond mere facts, that the past is never just bones and rubble, but a living conversation between what we can prove and what we dare to dream. Imagine a time before written language, when the only libraries were human voices and the only records were carved in stone. That's the world these megaliths were born into, a world where memory was fragile, where knowledge could vanish in a single generation unless it was anchored to something permanent. That's what makes these stones so extraordinary. They weren't just monuments, they were repositories, physical embodiments of stories too important to forget. Take the Aboriginal Australians, whose oral traditions describe coastlines and river systems that haven't existed for over 7,000 years, details so precise they align with modern geological data. If spoken words alone could preserve landscapes across hundreds of generations, what might stones the size of houses have held? The myths of giants might not be about literal towering beings, but about forces that shaped the world with the same overwhelming power. Think of how we personify nature today: hurricanes given human names, rivers referred to as mothers or fathers. Ancient cultures likely did the same, transforming earthquakes or floods into the deeds of colossal beings. The Jötunn of Norse myth weren't just giants, they were avalanches, storms, the cracking of glaciers. When a society sees a boulder carried for miles by a flood and deposited atop a hill, is it any wonder they'd call it the work of a giant's hand? These stories become metaphors, a way to make sense of cataclysms that defied ordinary explanation. But there's another layer here. Some megaliths might encode actual events, not through words but through alignment. The massive stones of Gerbically, Teep, arranged in circles adorned with carvings of scorpions and vultures, could be telling the story of a comet strike that triggered a mini ice age around 11,600 years ago. Researchers found evidence in ice cores matching the carvings, a date when the sky might have burned, and survival depended on remembering the signs. If true, these stones aren't just art, they're survival guides etched in rock, ensuring that even if languages changed, the warning would remain. This blending of history and symbolism raises a fascinating question: how much of what we call myth is simply science in another form? The Maori story of Tohaki climbing the heavens to fetch the stars mirrors the phases of celestial navigation. The Greek Titan Atlas holding up the sky could be a poetic description of axial precession, the slow wobble of Earth's poles over millennia. These narratives weren't wrong, they were frameworks, ways to package complex truths into stories memorable enough to outlast empires. So when we look at these megaliths, we're not just seeing stones. We're seeing the first attempts at hard drives, the original cloud storage. They hold the weight of generations who refused to let their world be forgotten. And that might be the most giant thing about them, not their size, but the sheer scale of time they've bridged, whispering across ages in a language of rock and sky. To truly grasp the genius of these ancient builders, look upward, because the secrets of the megaliths are written in the stars. Stonehenge's towering sarcens act like a colossal stone clock, their arches framing the summer solstice sunrise with pinpoint accuracy. But this isn't just about marking the longest day of the year. For farming societies, these alignments were survival tools. The winter solstice sunrise at Ireland's Newgrange, for example, pierces a narrow passage to flood the inner chamber with light for just 17 minutes, a fleeting moment that signaled the return of longer days and the promise of spring planting. Across the Atlantic, Peru's Chanquillo fortress takes celestial tracking to another level. 13 towers stretch across a ridge like stone teeth, their gaps acting as a solar calendar so precise that even today, you could use them to predict equinoxes within a day or two. What's astonishing isn't just the precision, it's the universality of this knowledge. Cultures separated by oceans and millennia independently developed ways to read the sky, suggesting something profound about human ingenuity. But here's the mystery: some of these sites, like Gerbically Teep, predate agriculture itself. How did hunter-gatherers carve pillars adorned with constellations 12,000 years ago? One theory suggests these structures weren't just observatories but classrooms, where elders passed down star lore critical for navigation or predicting animal migrations. Others, like researcher Giulio Magli, propose they were cosmic mirrors, ritual sites where the heavens were brought down to earth, blending astronomy with spirituality. That spiritual layer is crucial. For ancient people, celestial events weren't just dates, they were dialogues with the divine. The Mayans built El Castillo at Chichen Itza so that the equinox sun casts a serpent's shadow slithering down the pyramid steps, a fusion of astronomy and mythology made stone. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid's shafts align with stars linked to the pharaoh's afterlife journey, turning architecture into a celestial roadmap. These weren't cold calculations, they were acts of reverence, attempts to tether human lives to the rhythms of the cosmos. So did these builders inherit knowledge from a lost civilization? The similarities are hard to ignore. From the solstice-aligned calendar circle at Nabta Playa, a Saharan site older than Stonehenge, to the star maps etched into Mesopotamian clay tablets, the thread of advanced astronomy weaves through time. Maybe the answer lies not in forgotten supercultures but in something simpler, the shared human instinct to look up and seek meaning in the stars. After all, the same sky that guided them still stretches above us, whispering the same eternal questions. Beneath the physical weight of these stones lies something even heavier: their spiritual significance. Many megaliths weren't just placed randomly. They seem to occupy what modern dowsers call ley lines, invisible pathways of energy crisscrossing the earth. Walk the rolling hills of England, and you'll find ancient sites like Avebury or Glastonbury Tor aligned in eerie straight lines, as if connected by some unseen force. While skeptics dismiss ley lines as coincidence, the sheer number of sacred sites along these alignments is hard to ignore. Could the builders have sensed something we've lost, a way to tap into the Earth's pulse, turning stone into conduits for something greater? For some cultures, megaliths were literal gateways between worlds. Korea's dolmens, massive stone slabs balanced like tables, were burial chambers where the dead could pass into the afterlife. The Celts believed standing stones like those in Karnak marked portals to the otherworld, places where the veil between living and spirit grew thin. Even today, visitors describe strange sensations near these sites: sudden chills, whispers on the wind, or the feeling of being watched by something unseen. Whether psychological or paranormal, these experiences hint at why these places were chosen. They felt different, charged with an energy that demanded reverence. Then there are the carvings. The spirals etched into Newgrange's entrance stones aren't mere decoration. They mirror the movement of the stars, the cycles of seasons, the endless turn of life into death and back again. Similar symbols appear in Malta's Hypogeum, a labyrinthine underground temple where echoes create eerie harmonics, as if the walls themselves were designed to sing. Were these patterns early attempts to map the cosmos, to encode sacred knowledge in stone where time couldn't erase it. The builders didn't just want to impress, they sought to elevate, to pull humanity's gaze upward toward the divine. This spiritual purpose might explain the obsession with scale, or was the point, standing before a monolith that dwarfed them, ancient people didn't just see a rock, they felt the presence of something beyond human understanding. The stones forced humility, a reminder that they were part of a grander design. Yet this reverence raises a paradox. If these sites were sacred, why devote generations to their construction? Why haul stones across mountains, risk lives, pour resources into monuments with no obvious survival benefit? The answer might lie in the very act of building, a ritual as important as the finished product. The labor itself could have been worship, each lifted block a prayer, each alignment a covenant with the gods. But here's where spirituality collides with sheer engineering. To create these wonders, the builders needed more than faith, they needed innovation. The same hands that carved celestial symbols also mastered physics, geometry, and logistics. How do you quarry a 1,000-ton block without metal tools? How do you transport it without wheels? The stones guard their secrets tightly, but the clues are there in the chisel marks, the tool grooves, the faint traces of ramps and levers. Perhaps the greatest miracle isn't that they believed, but that they built. And in that intersection of devotion and ingenuity, we find the true heart of the megaliths, not just as bridges to the divine, but as testaments to what humans can achieve when they reach beyond the limits of their time. What if the secret behind these impossible stones wasn't strength or magic, but knowledge, the kind of knowledge we've since forgotten? This is the heart of the lost technologies hypothesis, a theory that whispers of ancient civilizations far more advanced than we've dared to imagine. Take Puma Punku in Bolivia, a site that looks less like ruins and more like the aftermath of an explosion. Its granite and diorite blocks aren't just massive, they're precision cut with edges so sharp, angles so exact, they rival modern machine work. Some stones interlock with complex grooves and notches, as if assembled by master engineers wielding tools we can't even identify. The local Aymara people say the site was built before the moon existed, a haunting echo of something far older than history remembers. Then there are Scotland's vitrified forts, where stone walls have been fused together by heat so intense it turned rock into glass. Archaeologists debate whether this was accidental burning or deliberate construction, but the temperatures required over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit suggest a technique beyond simple fire. Could these be remnants of some forgotten high-temperature technology, a way to weld stone without modern machinery? Even more tantalizing are the geopolymer theories. French chemist Joseph Davidovits proposed that the pyramid's limestone blocks weren't quarried at all, but cast in place using a kind of ancient concrete, a slurry of crushed stone and binding agents poured into molds. If true, it would explain how blocks fit so seamlessly with no chisel marks or tool grooves. Plato's account of Atlantis adds fuel to the fire. He described a civilization of unparalleled sophistication, its buildings clad in metals which sparkled like fire, its engineers capable of harnessing the Earth's energy. Most scholars dismiss Atlantis as allegory, but what if it was a distorted memory of a real culture, one that mastered techniques later lost to war or catastrophe? The similarities are hard to ignore. Megalithic sites worldwide share uncanny precision, as if guided by the same invisible blueprint, yet mainstream archaeology pushes back. Lost technology theories, they argue, often ignore simpler explanations. The Incas' famous knob and groove stone joints might not require advanced tools, just generations of patient trial and error. Experiments show that ropes, sand, and copper chisels could achieve stunning precision given enough time. As for vitrified forts, Some suggest they were ritual sites where fires were deliberately stoked to apocalyptic levels, turning ramparts into symbols of unbreakable power rather than practical defense. The truth might lie somewhere in between. Perhaps these builders didn't possess lasers or anti-gravity devices, but something equally extraordinary, a deep, intuitive understanding of materials and geometry, passed down through oral traditions we've since fragmented. After all, we've lost plenty of knowledge ourselves: Roman concrete, Damascus steel, Greek fire. If entire technologies can vanish in mere centuries, what might have been forgotten over millennia, the stones don't yield easy answers, but they ask a vital question: how much of human history is still waiting to be rediscovered? Gerbically Teep shatters everything we thought we knew about the dawn of civilization. Buried beneath a Turkish hillside for 12,000 years, this sprawling complex of massive T-shaped pillars rewrites the timeline of human achievement. Picture this: stone monoliths carved with intricate foxes, scorpions, and vultures, their surfaces alive with symbolism, erected by hunter-gatherers at least 6,000 years before the wheel was invented. These weren't primitive huts, they were monumental circles of stone, some weighing over 16 tons, arranged with deliberate precision. What's staggering isn't just their scale, it's the fact that they predate agriculture, the very foundation of settled society. Why would nomadic people invest generations in building something so permanent? The pillars themselves are a riddle. Each T-shaped stone resembles a stylized human figure, with arms carved in relief and belts draping their sides, as if watching over the site. The animal carvings aren't random, they cluster in specific patterns: snakes coiled around edges, birds mid-flight, predators frozen in stone. Archaeologist Klaus Schmidt believed these weren't mere decorations but a symbolic language, perhaps depicting shamanic visions or creation myths. The frequency of dangerous animals, lions, boars, venomous creatures, hints at a ritual space meant to channel power, not fear. Some researchers even suggest the pillars acted as totems, physical anchors for spirits invoked during ceremonies. But Göbekli Tepe's purpose might extend beyond the spiritual. The layout of its concentric circles aligns with celestial events, particularly the rising of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. Engineer Martin Sweatman proposed that the animal carvings correspond to constellations, creating a kind of Stone Age observatory to track comets or meteor showers. This theory gains traction when you consider the Younger Dryas period, a sudden climate catastrophe around 11,600 years ago, marked by global cooling and wildfires. Could the site's builders have been recording or even predicting cosmic disasters? Then there's the mystery of its burial. Around 8,000 BCE, someone meticulously covered Göbekli Tepe with thousands of tons of earth, preserving it like a time capsule. This wasn't abandonment, it was intentional entombment, as if the builders wanted future generations to rediscover it. Was it sacred retirement, a way to close a ritual space? Or did they bury it to protect knowledge they feared might be lost? The act itself feels like a message, one we're still deciphering. As the oldest known megalithic structure, Göbekli Tepe forces us to reconsider the roots of civilization. Maybe it wasn't farming that birthed temples, but temples that birthed farming. The site's location in the Fertile Crescent, surrounded by early domesticated grains, suggests that ritual gatherings could have spurred the need for organized agriculture to feed the builders, the pilgrims, the keepers of the stones. This flips the traditional narrative: first came the sacred, then the surplus. What else lies hidden beneath the world's hills and valleys? If Göbekli Tepe was buried to wait for us, how many more sites remain undiscovered, their secrets pressed between layers of soil and time? Every shovel that strikes the earth could unveil another chapter in humanity's forgotten prologue. The stones have been patient. They'll keep their secrets a little longer until we're ready to listen. On the most isolated inhabited island on Earth, the Moai stand as silent sentinels of a lost world. Easter Island's iconic stone giants, some towering 30 feet tall and weighing as much as 80 tons, dot the coastline with their hollow-eyed gaze. But these aren't just statues, they're the physical embodiment of a people's ancestors, their faces turned inland to watch over the living. The Rapa Nui oral tradition tells of chiefs and heroes transformed into stone, their mana, spiritual power infused into the rock to protect the island. Yet the sheer scale of their construction defies logic. How did a society with no metal tools, no wheels, and no draft animals carve nearly 1,000 of these monoliths from volcanic rock, then transport them miles across rugged terrain? The answer might lie in a surprising blend of myth and physics. Recent experiments by archaeologists Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo showed how teams of just 18 people could walk a 10-ton replica Moai upright by rocking it side to side with ropes, inching it forward like a refrigerator being maneuvered into place. This method, echoing Rapa Nui legends of the statues moving themselves, suggests the islanders didn't just drag their giants, they made them dance. The rhythmic motion, synchronized with chants, could have turned back-breaking labor into a sacred ritual, each sway a step closer to uniting the spiritual and physical worlds. But not all the stories align. Other oral histories speak of the Moai arriving at their platforms autonomously, powered by the mana of priests or supernatural forces. Could these tales preserve a distorted memory of the engineering feat, or do they hint at something deeper, a belief that the statues were alive in ways we've forgotten? The cost of this obsession with stone giants was staggering. By the time European explorers arrived in the 18th century, many Moai lay toppled, and the island's once lush forests had vanished. The prevailing narrative blames ecological collapse, a cautionary tale of a society felling every tree to move statues, triggering erosion, crop failures, and societal collapse. But newer research complicates this picture. Pollen studies reveal the island's palms were already declining before the Moai's peak, possibly due to introduced rats gnawing seeds. What's undeniable is the paradox, a culture that carved enduring monuments while their own survival grew precarious. The Rapa Nui didn't just build statues, they bet their future on them, as if the act of creation mattered more than the consequences. And here's the haunting question: how different are we? From skyscrapers to space telescopes, humanity still races to leave marks that outlast us, chasing immortality in steel and glass. The Moai's lesson isn't just about hubris, it's about what we value. The Rapa Nui could have built fishing boats with those trees, or tools, or homes. Instead, they chose giants, not for shelter, not for food, but for something harder to define: the need to reach beyond mere survival, to whisper across time, "We were here." Perhaps that's why their silent watchers still grip our imagination. They're mirrors, reflecting back our own hunger to be remembered long after our names fade. Balbeck's Trilithan stones defy belief: 3 limestone blocks, each weighing an estimated 800 tons, fitted together at the base of a Roman temple, with seams so tight you couldn't slide a razor blade between them. To put that in perspective, each block equals the weight of 2 fully loaded Boeing 747 jets. The Romans, master builders in their own right, didn't place these monoliths. They built their temples atop them, as if inheriting a foundation too monumental to replicate. Local legends whisper that the stones were laid by the jinn, supernatural beings of fire, or even the biblical Cain, who supposedly fled here after slaying Abel. But the real mystery isn't just their size, it's the logistics. How do you extract a block the length of a school bus from a quarry half a mile away, then hoist it 20 feet into the air with perfect precision? The quarry itself holds clues. Just uphill from the temple complex lies the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, an unfinished block still wedged in bedrock, larger than the Trilithan stones at nearly 1,000 tons. The tool marks here are eerily precise, with channels cut beneath the block, as if the builders knew exactly how to separate it from the earth. Yet there's no evidence of pulleys, cranes, or even the wooden sledges typically used by the Romans. Some researchers point to the pecking technique, workers pounding stone with harder rocks to gradually carve grooves, but the scale is mind-boggling. Even with modern machinery, moving these blocks would require hydraulic lifts and reinforced transport vehicles. This isn't just a Balbeck puzzle. The Great Pyramid's granite sarcophagus in Giza's King's Chamber fits the same unsettling pattern. A single block of stone hollowed out with corners sharper than 90 degrees, a feat nearly impossible with copper tools. Then there's Sacsayhuaman in Peru, where zigzagging walls of 100-ton stones lock together like puzzle pieces, their edges rounded as if melted into place. The similarities are too striking to ignore, cultures separated by oceans and millennia, all achieving near-identical precision without blueprints or shared language. Could these builders have tapped into a universal architectural principle, some lost understanding of geometry or vibration that softened stone like clay? The Romans, pragmatic as ever, seemed content to treat Baalbek's foundation as a gift from the past. Their Temple of Jupiter rises atop the older stones, its Corinthian columns dwarfed by the platform beneath. Archaeologists have found traces of even earlier structures: Phoenician, Assyrian, layers of worship stretching back over 5,000 years. Each new civilization built higher, as if trying to reach the same heights as the unknown architects who came before. That layered history raises a tantalizing possibility. What if Balbeck, like Gerbically Teep, is just the tip of an iceberg, a remnant of a culture so old its name has vanished, leaving only stones too heavy for time to bury? So who were these first builders? The local stories of giants might hold a kernel of truth, not in literal towering beings, but in the awe these stones inspire. When you stand beside the Trilithan, the sheer scale warps perspective. The blocks don't just sit there, they loom, humbling anyone who gazes up at them. Maybe that's the point. These megaliths weren't meant to be understood. They were meant to overwhelm, to remind us that the past is far stranger and far more capable than we've dared to imagine. And if Balbeck stones share a silent kinship with Giza, Sacsayhuaman, and beyond, what other threads might connect them, waiting to be pulled? Beneath the waves off Japan's Yonaguni Island lies a haunting spectacle, a sprawling, terraced structure with sharp angles and staircases that seem too perfect for nature's hand. Discovered in the 1980s by a diver, the Yonaguni monument has sparked fierce debate. Are these the ruins of a 5,000-year-old civilization swallowed by the sea? Or just an oddly symmetrical formation carved by tides and tectonic shifts? The sheer geometry is hard to dismiss. Flat platforms, right-angled corners, even what appears to be a massive archway. Marine geologists point to the area's frequent earthquakes, which can fracture sandstone into uncanny shapes. But then there's the turtle, a rock formation resembling Okinawan tomb carvings, and the twin megaliths nearby that look like Moai standing guard. The truth may lie somewhere in between, a natural formation later modified by human hands, a place where geology and myth collide. Now plunged deeper into the Caribbean, where sonar scans near Cuba's western coast have revealed what some claim is a sunken city. Symmetrical structures stretch over 700 meters below the surface, with what appear to be pyramids and concentric circles. Could this be a remnant of a pre-Columbian metropolis, or even a fragment of Atlantis? Plato's Timaeus describes a mighty island empire beyond the Pillars of Hercules, lost in a single day and night of earthquakes and floods. While most scholars dismiss Atlantis as allegory, the timing is provocative. Around 12,000 years ago, as the last ice age waned, melting glaciers sent sea levels rising by over 300 feet, enough to drown entire coastlines. From India's Gulf of Combat to Indonesia's Sunderland, underwater ruins whisper of civilizations that thrived when shorelines looked radically different. Yet caution is crucial. The ocean floor is a master illusionist. Off the coast of Greece, what appeared to be paved roads turned out to be volcanic rock formations. In the Baltic Sea, a sonar anomaly hailed as a UFO was likely just glacial debris. Nature sculpts the improbable all the time. Just look at the Giant's Causeway's hexagonal columns or Antelope Canyon's flowing sandstone waves. The line between human artistry and geological accident is thinner than we think. What's undeniable is the power of these submerged sites to ignite imagination. Whether real or mirage, they force us to confront how fragile human achievement is against the forces of nature. The same floods that drowned these landscapes also reshaped human destiny, scattering survivors inland, perhaps accelerating the rise of agriculture and cities as populations regrouped. Catastrophe, it seems, isn't just an end, it's a catalyst. And if the ocean holds these secrets now, what else might be waiting beneath the silt just beyond our reach? 12,000 years ago, the sky might have burned. That's the core of the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, a controversial theory that a fragmented comet slammed into Earth around 10,800 BCE, igniting wildfires across continents and plunging the planet into a mini ice age. Evidence lies in a thin layer of sediment found worldwide, packed with nanodiamonds, melted glass, and platinum spikes, materials that scream cosmic collision. Imagine the aftermath: glaciers creeping south again, ecosystems collapsing, and the few survivors huddled in a world turned upside down. This wasn't just bad weather, it was a reset button on human civilization. Now listen to the echoes in our oldest stories. The Epic of Gilgamesh describes a flood so vast that even the gods cowered, wiping clean the earth except for one ark. The Bible's Noah watches waters rise until mountains vanish. The Aboriginal Dreamtime speaks of a great deluge that forced ancestors to flee to high ground. These aren't isolated tales. Over 500 flood myths span every inhabited continent, as if humanity collectively remembered a trauma too vast to forget. Could these be garbled accounts of rising seas as glaciers melted, or tsunamis from the comet's impact? The timing fits. The Younger Dryas coincides with the dawn of megalithic construction, as if survivors sought to build monuments that would outlast the next catastrophe. This is where the megaliths take on new meaning. Gerbically Teep's carvings of scorpions and vultures might depict constellations as they appeared during the comet strike, a celestial warning etched in stone. The massive stones themselves could have been anchors, structures designed to withstand floods or fires. In Turkey's Derinkuyu, entire underground cities lie carved from rock, complete with air shafts and water channels. Could these have been shelters against a sky turned hostile? The theory suggests these builders weren't just honoring gods, they were preparing for doomsday. Not everyone agrees. Mainstream archaeology favors gradual change, slow shifts in climate, the steady rise of agriculture, societies evolving step by step. But the abruptness of the Younger Dryas challenges that. Ice cores show temperatures plummeted within decades, not centuries. Animal extinctions were sudden and widespread. In this light, megaliths might be more than tombs or temples. They could be time capsules holding knowledge meant to outlast chaos. The Incas knotted quipu cords, Egypt's star-aligned pyramids, even the precise solstice markers at Stonehenge, all could be fragments of a survival manual passed down through generations. So what wisdom might still be locked in these stones? The doggone people of Mali, long before telescopes, knew of Sirius's invisible companion star. The Hindu Vedas describe flying machines called vimanas with eerie parallels to modern aircraft. If catastrophe can erase libraries, it's the stones that endure. They become the hard drives of antiquity, storing data in alignments and carvings. Maybe the true purpose of these monuments wasn't to reach the heavens, but to remember them in case the sky ever fell again. And as we dig deeper, we're left wondering, are we decoding ancient warnings or rediscovering truths we were never meant to forget? The stones don't just tower, they speak. Etched into their surfaces are symbols that seem to whisper across millennia. Spirals that coil like frozen whirlpools, zigzags like captured lightning, cup marks drilled into rock as if to hold some long-evaporated offering. These aren't random scratches, they're a language without words, a code waiting to be cracked. Take the concentric circles carved into Ireland's Newgrange, mirroring the same patterns found on Scotland's Callanish stones and Portugal's Almenda's cromlech. Separated by thousands of miles, these cultures couldn't have shared blueprints, so why the same symbols? Some researchers suggest these circles represent the sun's cyclical journey, a universal obsession for agrarian societies dependent on seasons. Others see them as maps of the cosmos or even neural pathways, mimicking the spirals seen in trance-induced visions. Then there's the zigzag, a motif that appears from the temples of Malta to the monoliths of Mesoamerica. At first glance, it might resemble waves or snakes, but dive deeper and another theory emerges. Neuropsychologist David Lewis Williams proposed that these patterns mimic the entoptic phenomena, the geometric shapes we see when entering altered states of consciousness. Indigenous shamans from the San people of Africa to the Huacal of Mexico describe seeing these very patterns during vision quests. Could the zigzags be snapshots of spiritual journeys, etched in stone to guide others? At Turkey's Gerbically Teep, pillars carved with interlocking snakes and scorpions might not just depict animals, they could be a shaman's hallucinatory diary, a bridge between worlds. The cup marks tell their own story. These small, hemispherical depressions appear by the thousands across Europe, often clustered in ways that suggest counting or tally systems. In India's Edakal caves, they're arranged alongside what might be the earliest star charts. But here's the twist: when researchers like Dr. Derek Cunningham analyzed their angles, they found potential alignments with lunar and solar cycles. These cups might be more than ritual basins. They could be a prehistoric calculator, a way to track time or predict eclipses. Even more intriguing are the rare instances where cup marks intersect with later scripts, like at the Dunnad Hill Fort in Scotland, where Ogham letters seem to grow from older symbols. Was this the moment proto-language crystallized into writing? Modern technology is finally giving these symbols a voice. LiDAR scans and 3D modeling reveal subtleties invisible to the naked eye, like how certain carvings at Spain's Dolmen de Menga reflect sound waves, creating echoes that amplify chanting. Archaeoacoustics experts like Stephen Waller suggest some megaliths were designed as sound temples, where vibrations could induce trance states. Meanwhile, AI pattern recognition has identified recurring symbol clusters that might form a rudimentary grammar. At Malta's Tarxian temples, a sequence of spirals and dots aligns with later Phoenician numerals, hinting at a symbolic lineage stretching from the Neolithic to the dawn of history. Yet for all our tools, the stones guard their deepest secrets. Perhaps these symbols weren't meant to be read at all, but experienced, a tactile, visual, even auditory language meant to bypass logic and touch something primal. When you run your fingers over those ancient grooves, you're not just tracing lines, you're touching the fingerprints of minds that saw the world in ways we've forgotten. And that realization leads us to the next frontier, how modern science, from astronomy to neuroscience, is reconstructing the lost wisdom hidden in these carvings, not as dead artifacts, but as living keys to our own consciousness. Step inside Newgrange's inner chamber on a quiet morning, and you might hear something strange, a low hum, almost a vibration, as if the stones themselves are singing. This isn't imagination, it's physics. Researchers measuring the acoustics of megalithic sites have discovered something extraordinary. Many resonate at frequencies between 95 and 120 Hz, a range known to alter brain activity. In Malta's hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, a subterranean labyrinth carved from solid limestone, certain chambers amplify voices into eerie echoes that linger for seconds. Speak into the so-called oracle room, and your voice distorts into something otherworldly, as if the walls are bending sound itself. These aren't quirks of architecture, they're precision instruments. Modern sound therapy uses these same frequencies to reduce stress and induce meditative states, a practice rooted in the belief that vibration can heal or transcend. Tibetan singing bowls, Aboriginal didgeridoos, even Gregorian chants all hover near this magical range. Could ancient builders have stumbled upon this knowledge millennia earlier? At Portugal's Almenda's cromlech, standing stones arranged in circles create interference patterns where sound waves collide, producing beats that seem to pulse from the ground. Visitors describe feeling the vibrations in their bones, a physical sensation bordering on the mystical. One woman at Ireland's Noath swore she heard a chorus of whispers after chanting near its carved spirals, only to realize no one else was there. The question isn't just whether these acoustics were intentional, but how they achieved such precision without modern tools. Some theorists suggest trial and error, generations of builders refining shapes until the walls sang correctly. Others propose something more radical, that cultures like the Maya, who built echo-prone pyramids like Chichen Itza's El Castillo, understood sound as a tangible force. Their legend of the speaking stones at Uxmal tells of rulers conversing with gods through rock, a metaphor perhaps for acoustic phenomena we're only now quantifying. Yet the most compelling evidence lies in the patterns. From Orkney's Micho to Mexico's Monte Albán, sites with the strongest acoustic properties often align with solstices or celestial events. It's as if sound and sky were two parts of the same system, a way to harmonize earthly rituals with cosmic rhythms. When you stand at the center of these spaces, the resonance isn't just heard, it's felt, a bridge between the physical and the intangible. Whether by design or divine accident, the stones still hold that power, humming secrets to those who listen closely enough. Now consider this: what if these sonic blueprints weren't isolated? What if the same knowledge that shaped Newgrange's echoes also guided the angles of Egypt's pyramids or the curves of Peru's Nazca lines? The threads connecting these sites stretch farther than geography. They're woven into the very fabric of how ancient cultures perceived reality. Sound, alignment, and stone might be chapters of the same lost manual, a technology not of wires and steel, but of vibration and stars. Ley lines stretch across the landscape like invisible threads, connecting ancient monuments in patterns too precise to ignore. The concept was first popularized in the 1920s by British amateur archaeologist Alfred Watkins, who noticed that many prehistoric sites, stone circles, burial mounds, sacred springs, seemed to align in straight lines spanning miles. He called them ley lines, borrowing an Old English term for cleared paths, and theorized they were ancient trade routes or pilgrimage trails. But others saw something more mysterious in these alignments. Could these lines mark something deeper, hidden veins of earth energy that ancient builders sensed and harnessed? The idea took root among dowsers, practitioners of an age-old technique using rods or pendulums to detect unseen forces. At sites like Glastonbury Tor or France's Karnak stones, dowsers report intense energy surges along ley lines, often coinciding with underground water flows or geological fault lines. Some megaliths seem deliberately placed atop these intersections, their massive stones acting like amplifiers or stabilizers for this energy. Experiments with magnetometers at Avebury stone circles reveal subtle magnetic anomalies, while thermal imaging has captured unexplained heat patterns near certain monoliths. Modern pilgrims describe physical sensations, tingling skin, sudden warmth, even flashes of light, when standing at these nodes, as if the stones are still conduits for something science can't yet measure. Not everyone is convinced. Skeptics argue that with thousands of ancient sites scattered across Europe, some random alignments are inevitable, a trick of probability called pareidolia, where the brain finds patterns in chaos. They point out that many ley lines on maps rely on selective inclusion, connecting sites from different eras while ignoring those that don't fit. As for dowsing, controlled studies show its accuracy rarely surpasses chance, suggesting the sensations might be psychological rather than physical. Even the magnetic anomalies could have mundane explanations, like iron-rich bedrock or centuries of ritual fires altering the soil. Yet technology is reopening the debate. Satellite imagery and LiDAR scans now reveal previously unnoticed alignments, like the straight track linking Stonehenge to the lesser-known Durrington walls. Ground-penetrating radar has uncovered hidden springs beneath megaliths like Spain's Dolmen de Soto, hinting that water, long considered sacred in many cultures, might have guided their placement. Meanwhile, quantum physicists are exploring how piezoelectricity, the same property that makes quartz watches tick, could cause certain stones to generate weak electrical charges under pressure. If ancient builders understood these properties, even intuitively, it might explain why they chose specific rocks over others. Perhaps the truth lies between the mystical and the mundane. The Earth is alive with subtle forces, magnetic fields, groundwater movements, even the faint electrical currents that flow through the soil after a storm. Ancient cultures, deeply attuned to their environment, might have sensed these energies in ways we've since forgotten. Whether by design or instinct, they built their monuments where the land itself seemed to hum, a reminder that the bones of giants aren't just above us but beneath our feet. Hidden beneath the dense green canopy of Cambodia's jungles, a lost metropolis lay sleeping for centuries until LiDAR lasers peeled back the leaves like a magician's curtain. What they revealed was staggering. Angkor Wat, the iconic temple complex, was just the glittering centerpiece of a sprawling urban network, with suburbs, canals, and roads fanning out across an area the size of modern Los Angeles. This wasn't just a religious site, it was a megacity home to nearly 1 million people at its peak, and it's not alone. From the jungles of Guatemala, where LiDAR exposed 60,000 Mayan structures hidden under foliage, to the Amazon rainforest, where geometric earthworks suggest vast, forgotten civilizations, this technology is rewriting history one laser pulse at a time. The implications are dizzying. If LiDAR can uncover entire cities beneath terrain we've walked for generations, what else might be out there? Imagine the untouched megaliths waiting under the Sahara's shifting sands, or the temples swallowed by the creeping vines of the Congo Basin. Some researchers speculate that Turkey's Gerbically Teep, currently the oldest known megalithic site, might have siblings still buried nearby, older, grander, and even more enigmatic. The floor of the Black Sea, where rising waters drowned prehistoric shorelines 12,000 years ago, could hide structures rivaling Yonaguni. every sweep of Lydia's invisible beam holds the potential to shatter another assumption about our past. Yet with every discovery comes a dilemma. Excavating these sites risks damaging delicate artifacts or exposing them to looting and erosion. The Maya city of El Mirador, discovered in the 1920s, remained largely unexcavated for decades precisely because researchers feared the jungle's roots and moisture were better preservers than human hands. Even Lydia itself raises ethical questions. Should we map sacred sites if local communities oppose it? In Peru, indigenous groups have protested scans of ancestral lands, arguing that some knowledge should remain hidden. Striking a balance between revelation and respect is as complex as the ruins themselves. The thrill of what's next is irresistible. Future Lydia missions might unveil the fabled White City of Honduras' Mosquitia rainforest, or confirm whether the rumored pyramids of Bosnia are natural formations or human-made wonders. Each find doesn't just add to history, it recontextualizes everything we thought we knew. The past isn't a static monolith, it's a living puzzle, its pieces scattered and buried, waiting for the right tool, the right moment to snap into place. And as the lasers keep probing the Earth's secrets, one truth becomes clear. We've only just begun to read the story written in stone. Giants never truly left us. They just traded their stone hammers for skyscrapers and silver screens. Think of Jack scrambling up his beanstalk to face the bellowing giant, or the colossal titans of Attack on Titan towering over panicked cities. These aren't just fairy tales or anime, they're modern echoes of the same primal awe that inspired Neolithic builders to carve their gods in stone. The giant archetype endures because it taps into something deep within us, the simultaneous terror and fascination with forces larger than life. In ancient myths, giants were nature personified, earthquakes became their footsteps, storms their breath. Today, they've shape-shifted into metaphors for our own existential fears. Climate change, technological upheaval, the sheer scale of a universe that renders us insignificant. Look at how we build now. Ancient megaliths were monuments to the divine. Modern skyscrapers are temples to human ambition. Yet both share that same dizzying scale meant to humble and impress. The Burj Khalifa's needle-like peak piercing the clouds isn't so different from the way Stonehenge's lintels frame the solstice sun. Both say, look what we can do, while silently asking, will it be enough? Even our entertainment reflects this tension. Blockbuster films like Godzilla or Pacific Rim pit humanity against towering foes, mirroring ancient battles like the Greek gods versus the Titans. The stories haven't changed, the special effects just got shinier, but something vital has shifted. For ancient cultures, giants weren't just monsters, they were teachers. The Norse Jötunn embodied chaos, yes, but also wisdom. The Celtic Fomorians represented destructive floods, but also the fertile soil left behind. These myths acknowledged nature's dual power to create and destroy, a balance modern life often ignores. We've replaced reverence with domination, treating the natural world as something to conquer rather than commune with. Our skyscrapers may dwarf the megaliths, but do they hold the same sacred weight? When a storm topples a city today, we call it a disaster, not the wrath of a giant. In severing that symbolic connection, we've lost a language for understanding our place in something vaster. Perhaps that's why giant stories still grip us. They're subconscious reminders of truths we've buried under concrete and Wi-Fi signals, that we're small, fragile, part of an order older than steel. The next time you stand at the base of a glass tower or watch a kaiju film, listen for that whisper. It's the same one the builders of Gerbically Teep heard when they raised their pillars, a call to look up, not in fear but in wonder. And it begs the question, if we've outgrown the myths, have we outgrown the wisdom they carried? For For the Maori of New Zealand, the massive stone structures known as Pu Wenua are far more than static monuments. They are living ancestors, breathing connections between earth and sky. These carved posts, some standing over 20 feet tall, mark territorial boundaries but also embody the spirits of those who came before. Maori oral tradition speaks of the Patupea, a mythical race of giants who shaped the land, their strength echoing in the weight of these stones. When elders place their foreheads against the cool surface of a pu, they aren't just touching rock, they're pressing against the heartbeat of their lineage. Similar reverence flows through Native American traditions. The Zuni people of the American Southwest describe their ancient stone villages as Helona Idiwana, the middle place, where physical and spiritual worlds intersect. Petroglyphs carved into these rocks aren't mere art, they're prayers frozen in time, left by ancestors who understood the stones as living libraries. This worldview clashes starkly with Western archaeology's historical approach. For centuries, researchers treated megaliths as puzzles to be solved, measured, catalogued, and often removed from their original context. Easter Island's moai were hauled away to foreign museums, their spiritual significance reduced to curiosities in glass cases. Even today, excavations sometimes prioritize academic discovery over indigenous consultation, as seen in the uproar over Turkey's Gerbically Teep, where local Kurdish communities were sidelined during early digs. The disconnect isn't just ethical, it's epistemological. Science seeks answers in stratigraphy and carbon dating, while indigenous knowledge lives in songs, stories, and ceremonial practices. When a Hopi elder identifies a petroglyph as a migration map rather than abstract art, or a Hawaiian kupuna explains that the Heiau temples align with not just stars but ancestral pathways, these insights aren't folklore, they're data. A shift is brewing. Collaborative projects like the 2018 study of Maine's Cinch petroglyphs, where Wabanaki leaders worked alongside archaeologists, demonstrate a new model. By combining LiDAR scans with oral histories, the team decoded alignments between carvings and celestial events that textbooks had missed. In Australia, Aboriginal rangers now co-manage sites like Murujuga, using traditional fire practices to protect ancient rock art from bushfires, a fusion of millennia-old stewardship and modern conservation. These partnerships reveal a truth Western science is only beginning to grasp. Megaliths aren't relics of a dead past. They're active participants in cultural continuity, their meanings unfolding across generations. The challenge now is protection. Looters, climate change, and even well-meaning tourists threaten these sites. At Utah's Bears Ears National Monument, a surge of visitors has led to vandalism of sacred Puebloan petroglyphs, while rising sea levels erode Hawaii's coastal Heiau. Legal safeguards exist. The UN's Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples mandates consent for research on ancestral lands, but enforcement is patchy. Real preservation requires more than laws. It demands a revolution in perspective. What if permits to study megaliths required indigenous oversight? What if museums returned not just artifacts but authority, letting communities dictate how their heritage is shared? The stones have endured because they were never truly silent. They've been speaking all along, through the hands that carved them, the stories that guard them, and the descendants who still hear their voices. Our task isn't just to listen, but to amplify. The very stones that have stood for millennia now face threats more relentless than time itself. At Peru's Machu Picchu, the footsteps of over 1 million tourists each year wear down ancient pathways, while the oils from human hands slowly degrade intricate carvings. Climate change adds another layer of peril. Rising sea levels gnaw at Scotland's coastal brocks, and increasing rainfall erodes the delicate sandstone of Jordan's Petra. Even the air we breathe is turning against these monuments as acid rain eats away at the marble of Greece's Parthenon. The irony is crushing. The same global curiosity that drives us to preserve these sites is also hastening their demise. Some attempts to save megaliths have sparked controversy instead. Take Bolivia's Tiwanaku, where a well-intentioned restoration project in the 1960s used modern concrete to rebuild crumbling walls, inadvertently distorting the original architecture. Similar debates rage at Turkey's Hattusa, where reconstructed temple walls stand jarringly smooth next to weathered originals. Critics argue these efforts cross a line from conservation into fabrication, turning sacred relics into theme park replicas. Yet others counter that without intervention, future generations might have nothing left to study or revere. The dilemma cuts deep. How do we protect the past without freezing it in amber or rewriting it entirely? Hope isn't lost. On Orkney's windswept islands, local volunteers monitor the Neolithic village of Skara Bree with the vigilance of guardians, using 3D scanning to track subtle shifts in the stone. In India, villagers near the Bhimbetka rock shelters have formed patrols to deter vandals, blending traditional knowledge with modern surveillance. These grassroots efforts prove that preservation isn't just the job of governments or academics, it's a pact between the stones and the communities they've watched over for ages. Ethical tourism plays its part too. Initiatives like Iceland's Leave No Trace campaigns or Bhutan's high-value, low-impact travel model show it's possible to marvel at history without trampling it underfoot. But beyond the practical lies something profound. These megaliths challenge our perception of permanence. In a world obsessed with the next big thing, they remind us that true endurance isn't about resisting change, but adapting with dignity. The concrete at Tiwanaku may be a misstep, but it's also a testament to our desperation to connect across time. The villagers guarding Bhimbetka aren't just preserving rocks, they're honoring a conversation started by their ancestors. Every lichen-covered stone, every solstice-aligned pillar asks us the same question: what will we leave behind that's worthy of standing for 5,000 years? The answer isn't carved in rock, but in the choices we make today. Every towering pyramid, every silent standing stone, every satellite we launch into the void, these aren't just feats of engineering. They're screams into the future, desperate whispers that say, we were here. The urge to carve our presence into the earth is as old as humanity itself. When Neolithic builders hauled 20-ton slabs across moors, or Inca stonemasons fitted rocks so tightly a blade couldn't slip between them, they weren't just constructing. They were confessing their deepest fear to be forgotten. Fast forward to today and little has changed. Our skyscrapers pierce clouds, our names are etched on Mars rovers, our digital footprints sprawl across servers, yet the hunger remains the same. We're still those same trembling creatures, begging the universe to remember us. But here's what the megaliths understand that we've forgotten. Immortality isn't about scale, it's about meaning. The stones at Kallanish or Karnak weren't built to brag, they were built to belong. They tied people to the land, to the stars, to the rhythms of seasons and spirits. Modern monuments, for all their glitter, often feel hollow by comparison. A bronze statue in a city square might honor a hero, but does it make the rain fall or the crops grow? Does it hum with the solstice sunrise? We've traded sacred alignment for sheer altitude, exchanged communion with the cosmos for Instagram backdrops. The Burj Khalifa dwarfs the Great Pyramid, but which one still pulls pilgrims 5,000 years later? Yet the stones offer redemption. They remind us that eternity isn't found in steel or silicon, but in stories. The menhirs of Brittany don't just mark graves, they house the voices of those who placed them. The spiral carvings at Newgrange aren't idle doodles, they're a language, one that says, "This is how we saw the world." And that's the real magic. These sites aren't monologues, they're dialogues. When you stand in a stone circle and feel the hair rise on your neck, that's not the wind. It's the past reaching forward, asking you to listen. So what happens if we stop treating megaliths as relics and start seeing them as mentors? Imagine if our cities pulsed with the same intentionality as Gerbically Teep, if our satellites carried not just data but myths etched in binary. The stones teach us that legacy isn't about outlasting time, it's about speaking to it. They challenge us to build not just taller but wiser, to create things that don't just scrape the sky but stitch the generations together. The next time you pass a construction site or gaze at a rocket launch, ask yourself, 5,000 years from now, when the steel has rusted and the code has faded, what will your era's stones say about you? Perhaps the most fascinating thing about these ancient stones isn't whether giants literally walked the earth, but how persistently the human mind weaves fact and folklore into something greater than either could be alone. Archaeology gives us the how, the tools, the techniques, the painstaking labor behind these monuments, but folklore whispers the why, the awe, the terror, the need to explain the unexplainable. These aren't opposing forces, they're two sides of the same coin. Consider the massive femur of an extinct mammoth, unearthed by Bronze Age farmers who'd never seen such a bone. Is it any wonder they spun tales of towering beings, or the discovery of unusually tall skeletons in ancient burial sites, their stature magnified by generations of retelling until they became legends? The line between anomaly and myth isn't as sharp as we might think. Carl Sagan famously said that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and he was right, but he also championed the joy of asking questions without immediate answers. There's a humility in that balance, a recognition that the past doesn't owe us easy explanations. Take the massive stone jars scattered across Laos's plain of jars, their purpose still debated. Archaeologists propose burial urns or grain storage, while local legends speak of giants brewing rice wine for a victorious army. Which narrative holds more truth? Maybe both. The jars' practical use doesn't erase their symbolic power, just as the engineering brilliance behind the pyramids doesn't negate their spiritual significance. This dance between science and story isn't a weakness, it's a strength. When researchers uncovered the elongated skulls of Paracas, Peru, DNA analysis revealed genetic mutations unknown in any other population. Science gave us data, but the myths of the Viracocha, the tall, white-skinned teachers of Andean lore, gave those bones a context. Neither approach alone could capture the full picture. The same is true for megaliths. The mathematical precision of Stonehenge's alignments doesn't cancel out the druidic traditions that grew around it. If anything, it deepens their resonance. These stones weren't built by calculators or poets, but by people who are likely both. What if we stopped seeing myth as failed science and science as myth stripped of magic? The builders of Gerbically Teep didn't carve scorpions and vultures because they lacked better explanations. They did it because symbols held power, because the stars and the stones spoke a language beyond measurement. Modern physics tells us matter is mostly empty space, vibrating energy. That's not so far from the old belief that stones could channel unseen forces. Even ley lines, dismissed as pseudoscience, find an echo in today's studies of geomagnetic anomalies and their effects on human consciousness. The truth isn't always in the middle, but it's rarely at the extremes. As we near the end of this journey, the megaliths leave us with a paradox. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know, and that's not a failure, it's a gift. These stones were never meant to be solved like equations. They were meant to provoke, to humble, to connect us across time. Whether raised by giants, kings, or ordinary hands, they remind us that wonder isn't the opposite of knowledge. It's the spark that keeps it alive. So let's keep questioning, keep marveling, and above all, keep listening to the stories whispered by the bones of the earth.